Hello everybody, welcome you all. My name is Satyajit and on the behalf of Dnyanadeep Academy, I welcome you to this program of answer writing. As you know, we have already started this program where we discuss couple of questions, their structure, how to structurize them and what can be the content in those questions. So today, as I'm faculty of Social Justice and Indian Society, also Sociology as an optional, I have selected a couple of questions from these topics of society. Okay, so today's questions to discuss are first is about the caste system, and second question is about family and marriage system. Both are interesting, though very important questions. Look at this now. The first question is, though the caste system has been relatively weakened and the patterns of discrimination have come down, it still remains to considerable extent and has even taken newer forms in contemporary times. You have to discuss about that, right? So first of all, as it is a 10-marker question, basically we can divide this question into two different parts, subparts. Okay, the first part can be as it is a keyword of, let's say, caste system. This question is about caste system, right? The first part can be, it is relatively weakened and patterns of discrimination have come down. So this can be a first part to address in your question. So I will write Roman first, right? And secondly, it still remains to a considerable extent. It remains to considerable extent and has taken new forms. Okay, so this is the second part or the second Roman. Yeah, and you have to discuss about that. So you have to you can say express various views about it. First of all, as it is a 10-marker question, and you know, for 10 marker we are given with the 2 pages in the final answer sheet, right? And the word limit is of 150 words, where we have to, let's say, it is possible to cross that word limit up to certain extent, let's say 20-30 words more. By calculation, first of all, I will tell about the calculation and the space management. Okay, so the introduction and conclusion respectively will include 30 words each, right? So let's say, for example, 25 to 30 words in introduction and conclusion. Similarly, it will consume around 60 words. So out of, let's say, 150, 180 words you are writing in final answer, 60 words will be deducted to the intro and conclusion, and the final body will include 120 words. So in that you have to manage that, right? So first of all, let's draw a skeleton of the 2 pages and how you can structurize these answers in these 2 pages. Okay, as the for the sake of your information and regarding space management, in standard UPSC answer booklet, you can write 16 to 17 lines on each page, right? So a standard average count of the lines can be 16 to 17. Let's say 16 lines vertical, right? And each line will contain around 6 words, 5 to 6 words. That goes to somewhere around 100 words in page 1 and 100 words in page 2. Okay. Likewise, as I've already told, the introduction will be up to 25 to 30 words. So it can go to, let's say, for example, 3.5 pages. Sorry, 3.5 lines. Okay. So somewhere like this, yeah. So introduction will be of 3.5 lines. Likewise, the conclusion will also consume that much space. In the question, as you know, the first part is how it has weakened, or you have to explain in what formats, in what forms it has weakened and the discrimination has come down. So as the space management, I can add the part 1 here, right? So I will address my part 1 in this space and the part 2 in this space. Okay. So there are many variations of writing the answer. Let's say, for example, to introduce you with the first type, let's say the point format. So you will write first, second, third, fourth, fifth, how the caste system has weakened, and likewise how caste system still remain existent. Okay, and the conclusion, right? So introduction, body part, the first part of the question, and the second subpart of the question, and the 5 respective points. So as it is 10 marker, it is expected to write around 8 to 10 points of both the dimensions, and likewise to conclude. Second, or another dimension of presentation can be in diagrammatic format. Let's say, for example, the first part is about how this caste system, the forms are you can say are diminishing. Okay, in that you can draw a diagram how the caste system is losing relevance, and in that diagram 5 points related to that. Likewise, here also you can draw a diagram, right? So this can be a basic structure of your answer where both the parts must be addressed and given justice to its, let's say, complete sense, right? Now, as if you are clear with the structure of the answer, let's move to the content. First of all, let's talk about introduction. How this question can be introduced. There are various types of introduction, as you know. The simplest form is by defining the key concept. Let's say, for example, the caste system here is the key concept. We can start with defining the caste system. As you know, the caste system is a framework of stratification uniquely observed in Hindu. So, by the way, you have to just define what is caste system. Another format to introduce you with and particular to this topic can be a case study related introduction. Recently, in let's say a couple of months back, one news came into the newspaper where the news was from the Amethi school in Uttar Pradesh. Amethi is a location. You are aware about that Amethi, right? In that school, the incidence was you can say reported where the school management has segregated the students based on their caste for midday meal school meal, right? So students were segregated on the caste lines to get the midday meal food, even, right? Even several times we observe in our news and newspapers, you can say in the schools even the students are separately placed, separately seated in the classroom also, and various caste related discriminations beyond school, right? So if you have picked or if you have noted such example, you can directly pick that in a case study for your introduction. So here I can mention here that how to introduce with the case study. Though education system is on the modern lines and it has allowed the lower caste system to, you can say, to come to the school, but the schools are again facing with, or the schools are becoming the new places of discrimination even on the caste lines. Okay, so this somewhat like this introduction can be introduced. Okay, now talking about the body, the first part was about how the caste system is weakening. As you know, we'll start with the historical perspective first of all, right? The historical perspective you have learned in your modern India that in historical social reform movements, through various social reform movements like Satyashodak Samaj, like justice movement, etc., the caste system has somewhat loosened its significance, its rigidity. Okay, so that's how the social reform movements have contributed for weakening of the caste system. For example, Satyashodak and all. Secondly, by the process of urbanization, where the you can say people and the populace migrate from rural India to urban India, of course they lose their identity. So in urban areas, especially in metropolitan cities, people don't recognize or people don't identify their caste or caste let's say surnames and identities. So most of in the most of the cases, we can find out that in urban areas, the caste discrimination based on direct identity is weakening. Okay, so urbanization is also contributing to the weakening of the caste system and the caste patterns. Thirdly, very importantly, Indian Constitution is very liberal constitution, and from the first day itself, Indian Constitution has included certain articles like Article 14 of equality, Article 15 of, let's say, which bars discrimination on the behalf of the state, and the Article 46 in DPSP, where the Constitution mandates for the government to you can say implement certain welfare schemes for the weaker sections, including scheduled castes. So through these constitutional safeguards, we can say that the caste is losing its identity. Fourthly, due to uniform education, modern education, right, and English education, the education system and the education policies implemented throughout India, irrespective of the caste. Okay, so education system is becoming more and more inclusive day by day, and as you know, the gross enrollment ratio in the schools is nearly about 100%. So most of the or even all the children from the scheduled caste community are getting education. So that's how in education system also, or the education system is contributing to the lowering or diminishing, diffusing the caste identities, right? Fourthly, so these were the various areas or various factors those are contributing to, you can say, the weakening of the caste system. At the same time, now we are going to enter into the second part where we have to talk about how still, despite all those efforts, let's say constitutional efforts or the educational efforts or the social reform movements, caste still is present in various different forms in our day-to-day lives. You can observe that, right? So how, first of all, and by the way, when you have to connect the first part with the second part, it should not be abrupt, okay? It should not be a direct jump into the second part. There should be a certain connecting line between the part 1 and part 2 of the structure, as you can recall the structure of the poets too, right? So I would like to guide you regarding that, how to connect the part 1 with the part 2. It can be with a simple line. Let's say, for example, although caste system has relatively weakened over the period of time due to various reforms, it still exists in following new forms. Okay, how? First of all, the recent political phenomena since independence, we observed that caste has re-emerged, or caste has been re-emerging itself through caste politics, whereas politicians, they appeal their voters to cast their votes on the caste lines, okay? And several times we can observe that the voting behavior of the voters is based on the caste identity, and that's how the caste politics is playing very important role, where the whole democracy is getting manipulated, okay? So caste politics, caste assertion, or the vote bank politics regarding caste is very important new form of the caste assertion or the caste form identification, okay? The caste politics. Secondly, it is called as substantialization of the caste. It is actually new concept for many of you, but it is especially used in Indian society. What does it mean, by the way? Substantialization of caste is actually an interesting phenomena where the different caste, they compete with each other for certain benefits. Let's say, for example, reservation system. Reservation system was actually designed for the lower caste members, but nowadays we can observe that even the higher caste members are also demanding for the reservation and the benefits out of it. Recently we observed the Maratha reservation morchas, even OBC reservation morchas, which are particularly Jat reservation morchas, right? And if you can notice here that the Marathas and the Jats, they actually belong to the upper caste, let's say Kshatriya caste, okay? Despite that, being in the upper caste, they are actually demanding for what? They are demanding for the reservation. The actual reservation was meant for the lower caste. So this is called as substantialization, where different castes, irrespective of their status, they are demanding for, they are asking for certain benefits based on the caste identity. And that's how through these movements, through this the substantialization process, various caste identities are again getting new form, new energy, or new identity. Okay, they are asserting their caste identities, right? Thirdly, casteism in the private lives. Now, interestingly, I would like to introduce you with one important case study in Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow. One important sociologist, he observed in Lucknow, his case study is known as the rickshawalas of Lucknow. He observed that the rickshawalas, they do not observe, they do not, you can say, divide themselves, they do not discriminate amongst each other based on the caste. Okay, they forget their caste identities while they are performing their duties, they are performing their jobs, but while they go back to their homes, of course, in their private lives, they of course consider the caste identities, let's say in the form of marriage, rituals, festivals. So they will align themselves, they will mix themselves, they will socialize themselves in their private lives, particular to their only the caste members. So you can imagine what I'm talking about. It is the caste is actually diminishing from the public life, but it is still dominant. Rather, it is again asserting itself. The caste is asserting itself in private lives. Okay, so caste is moving from the public life to private life. So earlier, the caste system was used to be observed in the public life in very rigid formats like untouchability, segregation, residential segregation. But today, of course, that those rigid formats, the earlier older formats, are not that much the vibrant. But now the caste is showing some different ideas, some different identities. Okay, so caste is moving from public life to private lives. Okay. Fourthly, discrimination in employment. Certain case studies prove that while employing employees, the employers consider the caste identity, the religious identity of the employees. Okay, and many times the discrimination is observed on the basis of caste. If the employer or the owner of that company is belonging to a particular caste, he will of course favor the members of his own caste while employing the employees. Okay. Now, fifthly, urban and rural segregation, which is called as in society a ghettoization, G-H-O-G-H-E-O, ghettoization, right? So what does it mean? Ghettoization is actually a residential segregation of a particular community based on either caste, based on either religion. they live in a separate mohallas. Let's say, for example, to name with Bhimnagar, Indiranagar. Okay, we can find out in those localities most of the members, they belong to scheduled caste community. Okay, and the other upper caste community members won't live in those areas, or they won't. The upper caste community won't allow the lower caste to live in their areas. They will refrain from hiring, we can say, homes and residential areas to these lower caste members. This is actually actually a new rigid or a new less rigid format of the caste assertion, caste identity. So it is also a very interesting phenomena of ghettoization, as in the form of data. You can of course observe that the majority of the urban Dalits are slum dwellers. Okay, you can go to the slums, you can perform a case study or survey. You can observe that most of them will be the belonging to the lower caste members. Just like that, 12.6 of the population in urban India were Dalits. However, Dalit constituted 23% of the 20% of the slum population. Their population in Indian population, the percentage is 12, but why? It is in the slums that they belong, or they contribute to 20% of the slum areas, right? So this is something interesting. By the way, it has the basis of the caste discrimination, of course, which is not that much rigid, but still, because of, let's say, poverty and all, poverty especially in the lower caste, they prefer to live in the slum areas. Okay, that is called as ghettoization. Yeah, urban areas. Sixthly, very interestingly, internet augmented caste discrimination or caste endogamy. In these days, we are observing that various matrimonial sites like Maratha matrimony.com or Brahmin matrimony.com or Jat matrimony.com. Actually, don't you think that through these websites, actually we are promoting the caste identities? We are promoting caste endogamy. Okay, these are actually the new forms, the technology-based forms through which the caste is re-emerging itself. The caste is making itself alive again in the new forms. Okay, so that's how internet augmented caste endogamy can be a next point of our argument. Yeah. Of course, the seventh point can be physical violence. A few days back, one important news or several news come in that lines, but important news came where when the bride, so he chose to, let's say, for example, ride a horse to go to his marriage ceremony, and he was in the midway, was, let's say, for example, physically abused by the upper caste members, because the horse ceremony, the marriage is actually symbolic to the upper caste members. It is not supposed to done by the lower caste members. So in that way, in several times beyond this marriage and family institutions, we observe caste-based violences in our society. Let's say, for example, take example of Bhima Koregaon incidents, where the caste violence we observed a couple of years back, right? So caste violence is another example where most of the times lynching might happen. Okay, so these are the new forms in which the caste is reasserting itself, right? Now, this was about, by the way, the structure. So we introduced with either a definition of the caste system and, or let's say, a supplement to it can be a case study based, right? So case study based can be giving direct example from the newspapers. Okay, so how caste is changing its forms, and then we discussed about how the caste is weakening. However, how we also discussed about how caste is not weakening and it is re-emerging in new forms. And lastly, we can conclude that from this, you can say, all the discussion, caste has remained to continue itself throughout the ages, of course, right, with the help of changing its forms. So caste is not going anywhere. Okay, so it proves that caste is not going anywhere. It may change the forms. It may change from the rigid forms to somewhat, let's say, less rigid forms, but it is still existent. Interestingly, in India, there is one important and famous sociologist called as Prasad. Okay, Prasad performed one important sociological study where he observed in Andhra Pradesh that there are 150 different forms of untouchability present in India. Okay, and he concludes that though caste is not observed in its original rigid forms like untouchability and all, but caste is still observed in various many different new forms like that those we discussed, right? So this was about the first question. Now let's move to the next question. The second question is about the very important institutions called as the family and marriage institutions. were asked that analyze the trends of change and continuity in marriage and family system in India, and it is asked for 15 marks. Okay. By the way, the word used here is analyzed. Okay, analyze. In analyze, the keyword represents where we have to analyze the question. We have to break down the question in various different formats. So here already the question has been broken in various different forms, like the first is the change, second is continuity, and respectively with marriage and family. So there are various parts in the question to be addressed. So of course we'll discuss how, right? So as it is 15 marker question, we are given with the 3 pages and the word limit will be 250 pages and we have to structurize accordingly. So in this part, the first part will be the trends of change, the trends of change in first is marriage. Okay, so this will be the first part in marriage. Okay, marriage. The trends of change in family, right? And thirdly, the continuity in both the systems. So we can make 3 parts actually, or we can extend to the 4th part. We can also separately write continuity in marriage and family, but the points come to be the same. But in the continuity, we will integrate both the parts of marriage and family, but write the trends, the new trends of the change, marriage and family separately. Okay. If you want to draw a skeleton of the page, as it is a 15 marker question, we are given with the 3 pages, right? And the word limit is somewhere 250. So that means you have to end your answer somewhere here, starting with here, right? So simply you will write your introduction in 3 to 4 lines and likewise your conclusion. Okay. In which we are divided this question structurally into 3 parts, 3 main parts. The first part will be first the change in marriage system, right? So you will write down, let's say for example, 5 to 6 points. Okay, right? So let's say 5 points. The second part will be of change in the family system or familial marriage, whatever the sequence will be, and you will again write, let's say 4 or 5 points here. And the third part will be of continuity. You will write again 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, if you are sufficient enough with the content, you can extend your answer to the last line of the 3rd page. Okay, so it is totally fine. Let's say for example 5 points here and the third part ends somewhere here and your conclusion starts from here. Okay, so structurally it will be like this, somewhat like this. The introduction, the first part, the changes in the marriage system or the family system, changes in the family system, and likewise the continuity in both the systems, right? Now let's discuss about the actual content of the answer, right? First of all, how we can introduce this topic. We can directly start with, of course, defining the family and marriage system, or the significance of family and marriage system. Like family is the most basic social institution, while marriage is considered as sacramental institution in India. So a very simple question, simple introduction. Maybe you can add some points about the change and continuity. So throughout the ages, the family and marriage system in India has undergone through various changes. Despite it is still continuing in India, that can be an introduction. Okay. Now, the first part will be the changes in the family system. What changes we are observing in the family system? Firstly, the family size is getting diminishing. It is getting, let's say, lowering. For example, earlier we used to have joint families. Now we are observing that because of urbanization and industrialization, the families are decreasing themselves into size. It is called as nuclearization of family. Also, in the nuclear families, we are observing that the patriarchy is on decline, where the couple share their bond based on love, the bond based on respect, the bond based on equality. And that's how we observe in the new modern families, the patriarchy is somewhat on decline. And most importantly, domestic division of labor is cooperative because of that. Earlier, the gender roles were segregated, which job will be done by which gender. That means the domestic labor was with the female gender, and the outside work and the industrial work or something like that was with the males, right? So now we can observe that, especially in the COVID era, where both the members of that family or all the members of the family, they shared their domestic division, their domestic labor. Okay, and most importantly, the senior members, their authority is on decline because of the industrialization and urbanization. The youth population is migrating towards urban areas, right? and now they are actually establishing their own families, and the resources are with the income and all are with the young generation, and that's how, as the elderlies are losing the significance in terms of the power, authority, finances, the total overall senior members authority is on decline in the family system. Earlier it used to be a joint family system where the senior members used to perform huge authority on each and every decision. Okay, so but nowadays we are not observing the earlier roles played by the what we can say senior members. Then disintegration rate of the family is on rise because of divorce. Additionally, the parental roles are becoming more emotional, more emotionally intelligent towards children. At the same time, alternatives like live-in relationships or single-parent families are on rise. So these changes we are observing in the family system, right? At the same time, in the marriage system, we are observing that the pattern of selecting your mates, the mate that means partner, is changing. Earlier, the joint family or the families used to dictate whom to marry, how to marry, etc. But now we are becoming more liberal, individualistic, and more, let's say, freedom oriented in choosing our parent, choosing our mates, right? In many cases in urban areas, first of all, they meet separately for dating, and if they, let's say, are compatible with each other, then they can go for the further processes, let's say, involving their families and all, right? So now the pattern of selecting mates is somewhat changing. Various new considerations like the income of each other or the assets and all are considered by the wedding couple itself, right? Earlier the decision used to be taken by the family, and it was to be followed by the members, that couple, right? But now it is somewhere changing. Secondly, the change in the form of marriage. Earlier, the hypergamy, right? So having marriage with many, let's say, wives, or having many wives, that was the dominant form. But nowadays, because of the legislations and all, or social stigmas, we are moving from hypergamy to monogamy. Okay. Now, thirdly, the age of marriage is on decline. Sorry, it is on rise. And of course, with this recent constitutional amendment, the age of marriage has been increased to 21 for girls even, right? Intercaste marriages are on rise, where earlier it was very strict in nature. Caste endogamy was very strict, but somewhere the caste endogamy is in some extent also declining, though the facts are very lower. That means only 5% of the total marriages are intercaste marriages, but despite that, the intercaste marriages are happening. Okay. Now, marriage is not actually compulsory nowadays, and many of the other, let's say, mates and youths are sharing the idea that the marriage is not compulsory. An individual life, goal-oriented life, purpose-oriented life, satisfactory and happy life can be lived even with yourself, right? So this new trend is coming that marriage is not compulsory institution, right? At the same time, changes in the aims of marriage. So earlier, the aim of the marriage was continuation of the society, giving new generation to the society, right? That is called as Vansh Vadhavani, right? So point is that now the purpose and the aim of the marriage is changing. It is somewhat like sharing emotional bond with our partner, sharing or you can say sharing pleasure with our partner, sexual pleasure. So these new needs, or to fulfill physical and the emotional needs, can be a new trend in recent day marriage, which is observed. Okay, earlier it was a sacramental thing, but now it has somewhat changed from sacrament to the emotional and the physical need satisfaction. Okay, so changes in the aims of marriage. At the same time, in marriage system, we are observing various alternatives like live-in relationship. Without marrying, they can cohabitate with each other, right? So live-in relationships. At the same time, marriages are getting disintegrated because of, let's say, career, individualism, goal-oriented, or domestic violence, and etc. Divorce rates are on increase. That's how the marriage system is somewhat crumbling down, right, in a recent phase. At the same time, the same-sex marriages, which was earlier a taboo, now the society is accepting, at least in some forms, right? Then extramarital affairs are on rise because of the various platforms like social media and all, right? And then unmarried parenthood is also again a very important trend or change in the marriage system, where we can observe this trend in many metropolitan cities. And likewise, sologamy. Recently, one important news came in our newspapers where when girl she married herself, right? So that is sologamy. So these new forms or the changes we are observing in the marriage system and family system. So till now we have discussed the two structures of our answer. The last part is what is actually the continuity still, which is constant in family and marriage system. Okay, so first of all, despite all those changes and modernity, the waves of modernity and globalization, we can certainly say that the marriage is still a sacramental bond, irrespective of the arranged marriage or love marriage. Marriage is still a sacrament for Hindus. Okay, we perform all those you can say rituals in the marriages which are given in the Hindu or your respective religions, though it is love marriage or any other format, right? Maybe it can be same-sex marriage, though it is performed on the Hindu lines, right? So social evils like child marriages, dowry system, or domestic violence are still rampant. And as you know, in last years, there is one report called a Sari report, which observed that in Rajasthan, 30% of the marriages are still child marriages, right? Dowry, it is again getting in, let's say, exaggerating itself, right? Domestic violence are on rise, especially in the COVID era, right? So these all forms of the earlier which were observed, they are continued themselves with much and more, let's say, more intensity even, right? Thirdly, in weddings we observe that the expenditure is increasing day by day. So it is somewhere like a competition amongst the neighbors or our relatives. If one relative, let's say, expends, let's say, 20-30 lakhs on marriage, another competitive relative will go for 40 lakh, 50 lakh expenditure on the marriages. That is called as extravagance. In society or sociology, it is called as conspicuous consumption, where we compete in the form in the expenditure in marriages, right? So this is competition, conspicuous consumption, right? Then the fourth is that still the continuation is observed in the form of seeking the guidance of elders in deciding the marriage rituals, you can say the marriage forms and etc. Till now, okay? And fifthly, LGBT community, divorces, single mothers, etc. are still looked upon or looked down, let's say, for example, as a stigma in society. So majority of our, let's say, social members will not accept the new forms of marriages like LGBT marriages or divorces or even single mothers. Okay, so this is a continuity in marriage and family system. And likewise, sixth, values like mutual fidelity and devotion to partner are still to be the essence of the marriage. The love, the devotion to each other, the compatibility is still a dominant feature which was earlier also present in our marriage system. This can be, you can say, a few points which are still observed continuing in the marriage system. Okay, so likewise in this question we discussed in the body three different parts. First, the changes in the family system, then secondly, changes in the marriage system, and continuity in family and marriage system. And now we are in the last phase of our answer, where we have to draw some inference conclusion regarding that. We can observe that despite all these changes and the waves of globalization or the modernity, the family and marriage are still dominant institutions in society. So likewise, despite the forces of modernity and globalization, family and marriage institutions have remained at the core of the social infrastructure, social structure, as they will continue to play the functional role for human lives, because marriage and family perform very important positive roles in the lives of the humans, let's say, for emotional bond and etc. Okay, so I would like to thank you very much, by the way, for these two questions. We'll meet soon again with the another questions. Thank you.